Did you think a small town in Indiana being stalked by a monster from a spooky alternate reality was strange? Did you think a girl who can flip vans with her mind was strange? Did you think Jonathan Byers actually kicking Steve Harrington's ass was strange? Well, in Season 2, things get even stranger. Here's Stranger Things Season 2 in 6 minutes. If you spent Season 1 sure that logic dictates that there must have been other weird number people tested on by Dr. Brenner even before 11, you were right. A gang of misfits in Pittsburgh escape a building and speed away from the cops. Their leader, Collie, uses telekinesis to collapse a tunnel, but when the cops get out of their car, they realize it was actually a psychic vision. And we see Collie's tattoo. 8. It's nearly a year after the Demogorgon attacked Hawkins, and 11 sacrificed herself to stop it. Life has largely returned to normal for everyone. Will and his friends are jockeying for high scores at the local arcade, Hopper is dealing with crazy townsfolk complaining about sabotage crops, and Joyce is dating Bob, who's super nice. Except, this is Hawkins, so nothing stays normal for long. The crops are rotting at a supernatural rate, and Will is still being plagued by visions of the Upside Down, despite regular visits to the new head of Hawkins' lab, Dr. Owens, head scientist and flamethrower manager. He heads down to the gate of the Upside Down in the basement, and we see that the Upside Down seems to be making a hell of an effort to come right side up. Will's visions are getting worse, too. He steps out of his house and sees a giant monster looming in the clouds. Normal kid stuff. But it's not all bad. Hopper's covering up more than just what went down last year. 11 is alive, and expanding her palette from Eggos to TV dinners. Turns out she wasn't killed, but transported to the Upside Down. She escaped, but rather than put Mike and her friends in danger, she retreated into the woods and was later taken in by Hop, who reveals himself to be a master in the art of dance. On Halloween, Dustin and Lucas try to invite Max, the new girl, trick-or-treating, but she's really not having it. Neither is her insane jackass of an older brother, Billy. But she has a change of heart and scares the shit out of the boys halfway through the night. Max doesn't scare Will quite as much as his new vision of the shadow monster, though. Dustin returns home and discovers a strange little reptile he names Dart, and decides to keep it as a pet. That's not gonna backfire. He plays it totally cool with his mom, too. Hopper finds out that the rot in the fields of Hawkins is spreading into the forest as well, and tracks the epicenter of the activity to, you guessed it, Hawkins' lab. But Dr. Owens denies involvement. Anyone believe him? No? Moving on. Will has another vision of the shadow monster outside of Hawkins' lab, and decides to one-up 11's psychic powers, with the power of communication. That ends up being way less effective than Mind Blast, and the shadow monster attacks Will. Soon after, he starts acting a little stranger than usual, which, if you know what usual is for this kid, is a huge red flag. He whips up a nifty little art project that leads Hop to discover a series of tunnels underneath a pumpkin patch, which he gets trapped in. 11 discovers Hopper's files on her birth mother Terry Ives, and after months of seclusion, decides she's had enough and sets out to find her. And she does. But Terry doesn't communicate with 11 verbally. She does, however, telepathically impart her memories of 11 being taken from birth, showing her the girl she grew up with in Hawkins' lab, Collie. 11 hitchhikes to Chicago to find her. Will uses his connection to the shadow monster, which is acting as a sort of window into the Upside Down, to find Hopper. Joyce and Bob rescue him just as the flamethrower troops from Hawkins' lab show up to light things up. And as soon as the flames start, Will starts screaming like a banshee. Back at the lab, Dr. Owens brings Hopper underground and shows him that the gate into the Upside Down is spreading like a cancer. Will wakes up with symptoms of amnesia and an extreme sensitivity to fire being applied to organisms from the Upside Down. But he does seem to know that the shadow monster doesn't want the scientist inside a certain chamber of the tunnel system. Or at least, that's what he says. Because once the scientists arrive, they're attacked by a horde of demodogs identical to Dustin's pet Dart, who's grown up into quite the little monster. 11 arrives in Chicago and is taken in by Collie and her ragtag bunch of outcasts, who exact revenge on those who have wronged them. Collie has informed on a number of staff members from Hawkins' lab, and 11 recognizes one of them as the one who shocked her mother into her catatonic state. They enter his home and attack him, and he tells them that Dr. Brenner is still alive. That's a thread we're gonna have to pick up in Season 3. 11 realizes that her friends are in danger and heads back to Hawkins. The demodogs surface from underneath Hawkins' lab and run rampant through the building. Mike realizes that the shadow monster is using Will to spy on them and convinces Joyce to sedate him. They escape the building and lock the demodogs inside, but they lose Bob in the process. RIP, #Justice for Bob. All our heroes regroup at the Byers' house, even Jonathan and Nancy, who've been off sleuthing the whole season. We only have 6 minutes, people, gotta cut some corners. Dustin explains that the shadow monster is behaving just like the mind flayer of D&D, overtaking Will's mind with his sights on pretty much everything. The gang have a little intervention/exorcism in the shed and attempt to wrestle Will away from the mind flayer's grip. While they don't break its hold, they do manage to loosen it enough for Will to tell them, through Morse code, that the only way to defeat the mind flayer is to close the gate under Hawkins' lab. But they're going to need a really powerful psychic. Ah, she's back. While Hopper and Eleven travel to the lab, the kids, and greatest babysitter of all time Steve Harrington, travel to the nexus of the tunnel system to set a fire that will draw the Demodogs away from Eleven. Meanwhile, Joyce, Jonathan, and Nancy turn Hop's cabin into a backwoods sauna to drive the mind flayer out so it doesn't kill Will once Eleven closes the gate. The kids set the fire and the mind flayer flees. Ha! Mind flayer. Eleven and Hopper travel underground, and just as the mind flayer begins to burst through, Eleven goes full-on Jean Grey and closes the gate, instantly killing the hordes of Demodogs and returning Hawkins to safety once more. And they all lived happily ever after. Just kidding. The mind flayer is totally still out there and hungry for revenge. How will that revenge take shape? We'll see once Season 3 drops. For more on Stranger Things, check out all the Easter eggs and references we found in Season 2 and our recap of Season 1. And as always, be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you like to watch IGN.